Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave. On a beautiful January the 10th, 2020, Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we've made it to the weekend finally, Friday night. And what's amazing here, there's a Friday night, and there's no football being played tonight, but we got 3 straight days of fabulous football coming up.
Yeah, 3 straight days of fabulous football coming up, and it's just so exciting. It feels like Christmas. So many people, especially here in Northern California, really happy that there's another playoff game in town. It's been many, many moons since they had a playoff game here in the Bay Area, Big C, so a lot of people are really looking forward to that. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. You know, it's always amazing when you think about how great things can be in the world of the sports universe. I want to say Big C Sports, powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. You just got to have the app for it. Big C, I know that so much going on. I want to make sure we give attention to our national suicide hotline, because a lot of times sometimes we just want to make sure that people know 800-273 8255. That's 800-273 8255. You can text 838-255. That's 838-255 to get some help. Why is that so important to you, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's so important that we find a way to help and protect our great veterans of our United Armed Forces, Charlton, and especially with all the negative rhetoric that's coming out of the administration and the confusion that's coming out of there. They need to find a way to get help for our veterans that are out there and struggling and unfortunately committing suicide at a horrific rate in this country, Charlton. They need to find a way to get at least a cell phone or some type of phone in every veteran's hands, so they always have this outreach to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number.
We want to make sure 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 to get some help. And I know so much is going on in this great world. Even with all of the talk of NFL football and then the college, setting up for Louisiana-style, Big C, with LSU and Clemson, we still have a showdown, 1 versus number 2, in the championship subdivision. And I wish they would just go back to saying Division I AA, Big C. It's so much easier for people to comprehend. But we do have top seed North Dakota State. They are 15-0 versus second seed James Madison, 14-1. That game is Saturday. It's a noontime kickoff on Eastern Standard Time on ABC Sports. It's in Frisco, Texas. I've never been to Frisco, Texas, but James Madison has the #1 defense, while North Dakota State has the number 2 defense, but they've won 7 of the last 8 titles, and James Madison won the other in 2016. We talk about Clemson being dominant. Look at that record, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, if you want to go to Frisco, Texas, you might run into Jerry Jones while you're down there. That's where the Dallas Cowboys have their indoor practice facility in Frisco, Texas. But when you think about the dominance of South Dakota State winning 7 of the last 8
North Dakota
subdivision national championships, people talk about Clemson winning 2 of the last 3 Division I championships, but the dominance of this university, Charlton, out there in North Dakota is just phenomenal. And this is the home of Carson Wentz, who just had the Eagles in the NFC playoffs. So when you think about a program and you're getting people to come out there in the middle of nowhere, and in North Dakota, the only thing you got is pigeons and prairie chickens when you go outside. But, they've been able to bring some fine athletes into this university They've produced a lot of NFL athletes out of there, Charlton. They play in this small indoor dome stadium, but it's a packed house. It's must-see television. Everybody's at the game that can get in there. You can leave your house unlocked.
Yeah.
Nobody will go in and take anything because everybody's paying attention to the game.
Yeah, it's amazing. I remember watching the North Dakota State Bison. The first time I saw them was back in 1988, Big C. They had played a school from California in the Division II playoffs. But I know we talk about expansion of bowl games, etc. We'll get into some of that later. But this team, if North Dakota State wins this championship, they'll go to 16-0. 16-0. So that means that they're going to be looking at playing a regular season, what the NFL teams do when it comes to regular season, playing 16-0 games. And of course, James Madison, they've also played 15 games. But the thing about these programs, North Dakota State oftentimes will take on one of the big blue blood programs. I know they knocked off, it was Kansas State a couple of moons ago, North Dakota State. Haven't heard as much about James Madison going up and beating somebody bigger, Big. So your thoughts?
Well, they beat Purdue 2 years ago to open the season also, Charlton. Their former coach is now the head coach at Kansas State, and we saw him during the bowl season in 1A football.
Yeah.
But as you look at the level of talent now across the college football landscape, Charlton, it's about equality. Players want to go where they can play and be productive. You know, it's not always attractive to go sit on the bench somewhere, and you want to compete against the best in your level, and North Dakota State has been able to do that when you think about the players that they have turned out.
Yeah, you think about it, and when you think about James Madison, they lost their opener. It was 20-13 to West Virginia out of the Big 12. They lost 20-13 to West Virginia out of the Big 12. I know West Virginia, they played pretty good football over in the Big 12 conference. So that shows that their competition is not that far down from what we see at Division I. They've been progressively better since then. They rolled through number 6 Northern Iowa, Big C. They also beat number 3 Weber State to get to Frisco. And the Bison, North Dakota State, did not play an FBS team this year. They had to battle to get past Illinois State in the quarterfinals. They won that game by the score of 9-3, Big C. A team that scores 9 points is good enough to get to the championship game, and then they turned up the heat a few notches. They knocked off Montana State, which is a perennial power, and they found their way back into that game. And when we talk about recruiting, and I want to get your thoughts on this because we always talk about recruiting and what's it going to take for West Coast programs to build up what they did just about a decade ago when you had USC, right around the top of the heap in college football. Washington's also played very competitive football in the college football playoffs. We know Oregon's been in there as well. Utah knocking on the door. So you have about 4 programs that are knocking on the door of getting into the playoffs. How do you recruit if you're in North Dakota State where the temperature right now is about 20 degrees, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Minot has something that's very attractive, Charlton. It has a winning tradition. When you talk about winning 7 of the last 8 national championships in your division, that's very attractive to young men that have not been recruited by the top flight programs that are not, 4-star and 5-star recruits. You get a lot of 1, 2, and 3-star recruits, Charlton, that come to your university. You get all the best of the local product.
Yeah.
And so if you go look at the facilities that they have in place at North Dakota State, Charlton, they don't take a back seat to West Coast universities.
Yeah.
And they're always winning. And that's attractive to young people. You have to think about where you are as a 50-something-year-old man versus an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah.
You can remember what happened 20 years ago on the West Coast.
Yeah.
They have no idea what occurred on the West Coast. They're all social media savvy. So they see what's going on today. When you talk about the prominence of the SEC, every year competing in national championships, and you have 3 former coaches from the Pac-12 now in the SEC. You think about Ed Ogeron, who was competing for a national championship.
Yeah.
The Pac-12 told him he wasn't good enough. You think about Lane Kiffin, who just was hired at Mississippi, who the Pac-12 said adios to. And now you got Mike Leach, who has just left and gone to Mississippi State for greener pastures. He just signed a 4-year, $20 million contract with Mississippi State.
Yeah.
So the things that attract people to colleges, coaches, and players is money, opportunity, and exposure. And you're getting that in the Southeast, and you're getting that in the Midwest. By the time a West Coast team comes on prime time, Charlton, nobody's interested in football anymore.
Yeah, they got to start kicking off earlier. So it's all fair in love and war, and I love the fact that they're at least televising this game. And Frisco, Texas, Jerry Jones, are they going to Are they going to play in Jerry Jones' backyard, Big C? Your thoughts?
They're going to play in his stadium down there, Charlton.
Yeah.
I tell you, it's the Dallas Cowboys practice facility.
Yeah.
They've made a deal with the subdivision, Charlton, to host the championship down there. It's a marvelous facility. The weather will be perfect. It's a dome facility.
Yeah.
So it'll be a great outcome.
It should be a great outcome. And really wish those kids nothing but the best. I know they do it for free. Not as much talk about paying those kids at that level as we're talking about in the next programs that we're going to talk about with Clemson and also LSU playing for that national championship. So no matter who wins, I hope that they have fair play and fair referees. Now, the state of Texas does not have a cat in this fight, Big C, so I'm sure the officiating won't be a problem, Big C. Thoughts?
Well, no, when it gets down to this time of the year, Charlton, and you want to let the kids play. You have the best two programs in the country at that level of college football.
Yep.
And they've both earned the right to get there on the field. They haven't been voted in.
No.
So I think as far as what you've seen by them getting there, the officials are going to let them play. They know that North Dakota is used to being there.
Yeah.
And it's great for James Madison to make that appearance. And they've competed against each other before. I think you'll see an exciting brand of football.
Yeah, I really look forward to it, Big C. It should be a great thing. So may the best team win, and congratulations for making it to the championship game. I want to jump down south, Big C, as we go to New Orleans, and that's a city that just has, I know they had a lot of maybe heartache over what happened to the Saints. It's like 3 years in a row the Saints have been almost, I would say, one of the top 2 or 3 favorites to at least get to the NFC championship game. And even whether they get there or not, they seem to always end on a call that's always questioned. And we know that happened with the Vikings also. So maybe something that can cure some of the ills down there is you still have a home state program in LSU ending their season at that beautiful stadium that seems so much calamity for the home team. I'm not trying to equate LSU to New Orleans Saints, Big C, but I'm sure that a lot of them pull for each other. College football, playoffs, national championship game is what we've all been looking forward to. And I want to just get your feeling of how the city is embracing for this, or is it not a connection because Baton Rouge and it's not as close to New Orleans as a lot of people think, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's only an hour drive away from New Orleans, so it's a stone's throw away. I mean, you think about the logistics in Los Angeles, getting from Westwood to Pasadena, where UCLA has to play a game, Charlton. It's basically in your home backyard. I mean, Tulane University is right there in New Orleans, but still, Baton Rouge and the Tigers with LSU are the home team in the state. Not only that, this is the 4th time that LSU has competed for a national championship.
Yeah.
And all 4 of those have been played in the Superdome in New Orleans. So they're not uncommon to having the Tigers play there for a championship, Charlton. So this is a home cooking meal for them.
Yep. When you think about the star player, just like in the professional ranks, they'll take the college players. And it's about a name. So Joe Burrow, quarterback LSU, when you think about this guy, a Heisman Trophy winner, he just set the college football playoffs record with 8 total touchdowns against Oklahoma. And I hope he didn't throw out his arm. The pitcher, if he pitches too much, they like to pull him right about 100 pitches. You ever hear him pulling the quarterback when he's had 6 touchdown passes? He had 8, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he had 8, and he could have had 12 if they'd have let him just throw the ball continuously. I think they pulled back on him. Not only that, Charlton, they pulled him the last 5 minutes of the game against Oklahoma, basically the mercy rule, trying to run out the clock, because Oklahoma has always had one of the more shabby defenses in college football over the last decade, Charlton, and they had no answer for Joe Burrow in this game.
When you think about Burrow, he completes around 77 to 78% of his passes, Big C. Very, very good. His accuracy is off. He's very accurate. It's off the charts. And he grades out pretty high in every category, no matter who's talking about him. But the thing that impressed me about seeing Burrow throw the ball is when he goes on the run, Big C, and to watch him against Oklahoma, that really doesn't like to play defense, it seems, when they get to these championship games, Big C. He had scrambled to the sideline, and where most people would have just thrown the ball away, he was about a yard from the sideline and then flicked the ball about 30 yards downfield to his receiver, who also caught it about a yard from going out of bounds. So he never gives up on a play. I wonder if there's something that might be a liability, Big C. Your thoughts?
No, Jonathan, it's not a liability. These are the things that quarterbacks work on all the time. And when you look at Joe Burrow, he had the mobility when he came to LSU from Ohio State. He was a great basketball player in high school in the state of Ohio, as well as a football player. And when he came there, and you look at the quarterback that they brought in, this is a quarterback that worked to his attributes. They knew that mobility was one of the things that Joe Burrow had. And he runs, he doesn't run, he moves to buy time. He's not running, he's moving the pocket.
Yeah.
He's buying his time. You see him, he's not on a sprint, Charlton. He's gliding towards the sideline, and it allows the receivers to be able to come back towards the quarterback. You see that in every great offense when you have a passing attack. Receivers that will work back, they work on those things all the time in practice. But when you think about Burrow, what he did on the season and up to today, he's at 55 touchdown passes for the year of 2019. You know, he's thrown over 5,000 yards in completion.
Yep.
He's completing a 78% ratio of his passes. So what we've seen in Joe Burrow, we have never seen at this level in college football to have a team of this height. Even though Anthony Gordon led the nation in passing in just 13 games, make that 14 games because they had a 13 games because they had a playoff game. Well, not a playoff, but a bowl game.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow has done it at such a high rate and led his team to a perfect record thus far at 14-0. We're in rarefied air right now, seeing one of the greatest teams in college football history if they're able to pull off this victory against Clemson on Monday.
When you think about his stats, Big C, he's 378 completions out of 478 attempts, 5,208 yards. Again, 77% completion rate, actually 77.6, so I'll call it 78. Averages 10.8 yards average per completion. His longest completion was 78 yards. He made 55 touchdowns. He's only thrown 6 interceptions, and for a guy that throws the ball that much, you would think he would have gotten picked up more than that. He's only been sacked 29 times. So this kid, I mean, to throw the ball 478 times, and he's only been sacked 29 times, oftentimes playing against the best defenses, you know, in the country when it comes to college football. Let me get your thoughts. Everyone want to rave him. They want to say, hey, we're going to crown him. What did Dennis Green say? You want to crown him? Crown him. As a defensive guy, what do you see as a weakness? What are the good old boys at Clemson going to look at? Is there a weakness that you see, Big C? Your thoughts?
I haven't recognized, nor have any other defensive coordinators recognized any weaknesses against LSU offense. They've gone out and scored against everybody. When you think about what LSU has done this year, they have been beaten 6 teams that are ranked in the top 10.
Yeah.
So anyone can't quantify where a weakness is with LSU. I guess the biggest weakness, you have to find one.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow has been sacked 29 times in 14 games.
Yeah.
So that's basically he's been sacked an average of 2 times a game.
Yeah.
But in him taking those sacks is his unwillingness to throw away the football, to live another down. But he's never put his team in bad situations, Charlton. You talk about the 6 interceptions that he's had on the season. This is a phenomenal number for a team that has a quarterback with over 5,000 yards through the air. He has the mobility with his legs. His offensive line is going to be healthy, and they're mammoths up front. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who is his safety net, should be healthy. He did not play in that first round of playoff games, Charlton, with the hamstring. But he comes in, he adds a whole new dynamic to the offense with his running and catching, and especially his blocking ability.
He had 1,300 yards on the season, Big C. You know he can run. He averages 6.6 yards per carry. And these numbers seem kind of gaudy. But when I think about it, he's running against Alabama. He's running against Auburn. He's running against programs like Georgia and then Florida and then Tennessee. I mean, it's like on and on and on. And then they scheduled Texas out of the Big 12 conference, and they have those kind of numbers. Really, really impressed. When you look at their receiving yards, I think Chase is amazing. 75 receptions, 1,559 yards on the season. And also Jefferson has 100 catches, 1,434 yards on the season. They just have so much to guard for if you are a defensive coordinator. I really like what we're seeing on that side of the ball. But, you know, running backs in that conference, Big C, we think of it as a run-heavy conference, and I think it is. But when you have the second guy on your team, a 1,300-yard guy running the ball, that says a lot about your offense too, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about it, you look at his yards per carry. You think about that. If you put that in the label of the top rushers in the nation, and there were 4 2,000-yard running backs in the country this year, if you give him another 100 carries like those other backs had, Charlton, think how even more dominant this offense could be. They run a 3-back rotation at LSU. But to have a back that is prominent as Clyde Edwards-Helaire for you in the background, who all year long gets overlooked because of the accolades of your quarterback.
Yeah.
But when it's called for him to step up, Charlton, he steps up with phenomenal numbers. He's a great receiver out of the backfield. He's that check-down guy who's consistent there. But the one guy you haven't looked at is going to be Thaddeus Moss, the tight end for the LSU Tigers, Charlton. This is a guy who caught a long touchdown pass against Oklahoma because Oklahoma forgot about him, not thinking about him. They're thinking about the two wideouts.
Yeah.
But now with Thaddeus Moss being a vulnerable weapon in that offense, you have 4 capable receivers every play for LSU. You can't double up on anybody.
No, you can't double up on them. But on the other side of the line, I know LSU is loaded. They really blew out Georgia in that SEC championship game. Oklahoma had a lot of issues going in. It's almost like is this really Oklahoma? But they were beaten down pretty soundly. At some point in time, you just got to say, but this is the same team that only beat Texas by a touchdown, if that gives any hope to Clemson. So I want to go to the other side of the line of scrimmage. We hear about Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, the kid is amazing, going to be a first-round draft pick when he goes to the NFL. But he only threw the ball 370 times. He completed 250 of those. Had a lot of flack because he wasn't that accurate earlier in the season, Big C. He threw for 3,431 yards. He completed 67% of his passes, 9.3 average. His longest pass was 87 yards. And he only threw for 36 touchdowns, Big C. He only threw for 8 interceptions. And unlike Burrow, he's been sacked only 15 times, but the Clemson offensive line is not really given the same kind of status, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at what Trevor Lawrence is, I mean, how can you ever say anything negative about Trevor Lawrence? This young man has played, I believe, 28 college football games.
Yeah.
He is 28 as a starter in college football. And he has played everybody that's been on the schedule, everybody that's put in front of him.
Yeah.
He's played the top teams in the country. He's played Ohio State and beat them. He's played Alabama and beat them in consecutive years. So when people want to downplay what Clemson's offense can do and what Trevor Lawrence's overall numbers are, I mean, numbers can be gaudy. As I spoke about earlier, Anthony Gordon at Washington State, I believe he passed for 5,400 yards in 13 games.
Yep.
Washington State won nothing. They couldn't even win the Pac-12 title with those type of gaudy numbers. But when you look at Trevor Lawrence, his numbers are efficient.
Yeah.
They're efficient within the system that they run there at Clemson. He has a couple of outstanding receivers, Charlton. He has a serviceable tight end. He has an outstanding running back in the backfield, and Travis Etienne, who led the conference in rushing. So when you look about Clemson, their starters normally do not play a full game. They're out of there by midway through the third quarter, sometimes the beginning of the fourth quarter. So if you left Trevor Lawrence in for those entire games, his numbers would have been up 4,400 yards on the year.
Yeah.
But Dabo Swinney felt that it wasn't important to have individual accolades. It's all about the team win when you're at Clemson.
Yeah, and when you think about his numbers, even though I don't think their conference is as tough as the SEC, when it goes for a championship team, you can put their performance up against anybody, so no one can knock them for that either, Big C. When you turn around and look at who he's throwing the ball to, T. Higgins is caught for 1,115 yards, only on 56 receptions. He averages 20 yards per catch. Just find T. Higgins. Big C, you don't have NFL guys that can average 20 yards a catch. He's more prime NFL ready, as well as any other receiver in the country, Big C. Your thoughts?
And he's only a sophomore, and you say you don't feel that their schedule is as tough as the SEC. Well, who have they played in the championship game, Charlton, the last 3 years? The SEC.
Yeah.
They've beaten them 2 out of 3 times. Now they're looking at a 4th consecutive run at an SEC team. So when you talk about schedule, when they're put head-to-head against an SEC team, these SEC teams have not favored very well. But T. Higgins, when you think about him having the size of just a sophomore, going up, being able to get the football, you saw what he did in his coming-out party last year against Alabama in the championship game, and he's continued that throughout the season.
You know, they have a guy that not many people know about, but he was Mr. Northern California. His name is Joel Nagata. He's a freshman receiver, Big C, 17 catches, 240 yards, but he averaged 14 yards a catch. He played at Folsom High School up in Northern California, Sacramento area. But he was one of the Mr. California Players of the Year, and he barely gets on the field. So when I look at Ross, he has 61 catches, 789 yards, averaging 13 yards a catch. And then Rogers, 28 catches, 418 yards, and also 15 yards a catch. The player that I want to make sure and I don't have to do it because everybody knows it. His name is Travis Etienne, and that brother's amazing. When I think about players who can run the football, of course, he can do it. But he also caught 32 catches, 396 yards. He averaged 12 yards a catch, Big C, out of the backfield, Travis Etienne. And then when you combine that with his rushing attempt, 192 carries, 1,534 yards, averages 8 yards per carry. That's amazing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Yeah, but Etienne is not their best receiving back. He's no more of an Achilles heel when you look at him as a receiver out of the backfield. And normally Clemson, when they're going to throw the ball, they take him out of the game when they're in a pure passing situation. He will catch swing passes periodically, but he hasn't been that productive in their passing game because he's a poor blocker in the backfield. Running the ball, he's been great. He's very explosive. I mean, one of the more elusive running backs that you're ever going to see in college football these days. But you know, they try to take him out. But I want to go back to that point about that one receiver that you talked about from Northern California, only getting 17 catches. Why didn't he go to a Pac-12 school instead of going all the way across the country to Clemson 3,000 miles away?
They kept showing on the news, they kept delivering him brown paper bags, but there was never any food in the paper bags, Big C. So you can read between the lines. Everybody has their own reason for going where they're going. And oftentimes when your belly's full and your bank account's full too, just stuff that I hear, you never know. The kid actually grew up in Reno, Nevada, and how he got to go to a high school in Northern California about 120 miles, west of Reno. They say he also had paper bags too, but I don't know. I wasn't there for the paper bags. But I want to get your feeling. Everybody goes by a feeling. They say a lot of times you got to trust your gut. A lot of plays are called by your gut instinct. A lot of coaches do that. When you look at, and I must ask you this about, Burrow, what's his weakness? What do you see as a weakness when you look at Trevor Lawrence? Because as a defensive guy, you can't say, I don't see any weaknesses. You got to see something, Big C. Your thoughts?
What this young man can't do and what he hasn't accomplished, I mean, that's his weakness when you look at it. He showed his capability to run and outrun a secondary. We know the speed in Ohio. Those guys are not slouches. Right. He took a 64-yard run against Ohio State's defense and secondary, took it all the way to the house for a touchdown and changed the momentum of the game.
Yeah.
We know the accuracy that he possesses. You talked about the 66% on the season, Charlton.
Yeah.
Look at what he does on the playoff level, his accuracy. You saw how he butchered Alabama last year, and he was without one of his top receivers in the game against Ohio State.
Yeah.
So as you put him in with his full complement of assets, Charlton, I don't know if you really can. He's not going to be nervous because he's been in this position before. So I think he has the upper hand as far as confidence going into this game. And you don't get to the national championship game having weaknesses or flaws. You don't get there as a fluke.
Right.
They came from behind against Ohio State where they were down by a couple scores
16-0
at the end of the first quarter.
Yeah.
But they had resilience, and they came back, and that resilience was because of their quarterback. You take a 19-year-old man and say, look, put it on my back.
Yeah.
I'm taking you to the promised land, and he did that.
Yeah, he did that. Now, before we get to the Big C timeout, and I want to come back and just close out on some college football thoughts and then get into the NFL, when you look at a guy like Dabo Swinney, a religious boy, I want to say boy, I'm just saying good old boys. I'm not trying to be disparaging, but religious man. Ed Orgeron, I guess the same kind of thing. But Ed Orgeron's, his journey was a little bit more difficult because, as you said earlier, he wasn't really wanted by Southern Cal. I think he was 4-2 at Southern Cal. They decided they wanted to go 6-2, and they decided they wanted to go in a different direction, and they did. But Dabo's built his program, and even when he was down at LSU, they were talking about maybe not making him the final choice. So he kind of eased his way into the job at LSU also. Dabo's been a little bit different. He's been the guy that they trusted him, and they wanted to put money into him. And I want to get your feeling on which coach. I'm going to get your feeling on which coach you feel is there for the long haul because the NFL is always knocking. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, ironically, both of these coaches got their head coaching job in the same way at their present university.
Yeah.
Dabo Swinney was an interim coach when Bowden was fired down at Clemson.
Yeah.
They just gave him the interim coach. He wasn't hired as a head coach down there initially.
Yeah.
At the end of the season, they gave him the label of head coach after he had some success after the Bowden kid had been fired. Same with Ed Orgeron. When Les Miles was let go, he was given the interim title.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, after he had some success the rest of the season, he was given the label as a head coach. So both of these coaches are where they want to be. They have no NFL aspirations, and why should you? When you're the big dog in town, think about it. Right now, LSU is starting higher praise than New Orleans Saints are in Louisiana.
Really?
And Louisiana is the son of the state.
Yeah.
But what Ed Ogeron has done down there with the Tigers, and the Tigers have always had 100,000 people in their stadium, is that he's taken this program to new heights. I had an opportunity to attend the SEC championship game.
Yeah.
And when he says go Tigers, everybody in the state means go Tigers. I know people love the Saints, but no one loves anybody more than what they love the LSU Tigers. And like I said, this is their fourth run at a national championship. The New Orleans Saints has only had one run at a Super Bowl championship. You go down to Clemson, same thing with Dabo Swinney. This guy is a native son of Alabama. Alabama was going to toss money at him if Nick Saban retired, but they gave Dabo Swinney as much, if not more, money than what Nick Saban is getting at LSU at Clemson.
Yeah.
And they have increased the digs. If you saw the facilities that both of these great universities have, Charlton, NFL teams don't have these type of facilities.
Yeah.
And these guys go out and recruit. They bring in young men that they have control of. They don't have to worry about some multi-million-dollar athlete saying, I want to be traded and I don't want to be here.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love talking about the sport. We're going to take what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. After we take the timeout, we're going to come back and talk more about college football. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. And you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on the apps that I love called Google. Our Alexa, just say Google. Our Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. I want to just close with this because football is big, and we love it. It's just something that makes people feel good. It also has its good and bad things, too. We know that. But when you look at the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, the Peach Bowl, and Cotton Bowls, and now you toss in the national championship game, Big C, it's paid out already $549 million to the conferences and the schools. Now, that's important because I know we talk about expansion and will there be expansion or not. It's amazing just to understand this. If they go to 8 games as opposed to the 4, the 4 teams, if they go to 8 teams, they're expecting there'll be another $420 million tossed into it. This contract runs out in 2026. They're going to expand because they're not going to turn their back on the $420 million, and they'll figure out it's not going to make bowls go away. They'll just add those bowls into the fray. Big C, your thoughts?
You can't add all those bowls into the fray, Charlton, because you only got 5 bowls, so that means you can only have 2 games, 2 rounds of games. So you're going to lose those games. You're going to lose the meaning of what New Year's means to college football. I don't think college football is greedy enough to want to lose tradition, all of its tradition. I mean, money sounds like the money is not going to go away.
Yeah.
But it can't feed all the conferences in doing that. And when you're willing to give up tradition, you might as well give up New Year's. Just like the NFL is not going to give up Sunday, college football is not going to give up those bowl games on New Year's tradition.
Well, keep in mind, if you say the NFL won't give up Sunday, they won't. But they've expanded. They're playing NFL Monday night. They used to have 2 games on Monday. They moved NFL into Thursday, and you can find NFL on Saturday. So they're playing almost 4 days out of the week.
But in the collective bargain agreement, I think Thursday games are going to disappear in this next collective bargain agreement because the players are talking about the injury factor and the lack of recovery time, and the Thursday night games generally are meaningless. You have a game on Sunday and you got to turn around and play 4 days later. That's too hard on the players. And as they're talking about increasing the season 1 more game, if they do that, Thursday night is gone.
Yeah, well, I think money rules out. And one more thing I want to bring up, because this is down in your neck of the woods, Big C. When you think about this contract that the CBS has with the SEC, it's about a $60 million deal, $55 million. ESPN's they're in negotiations to buy the rights for SEC football through after the 25-26 bowl season. They're talking $300 million. CBS is going to lose that bid. And because of that money, they're just going to expand because the money is expanding. And it may not always please people, but that's a lot. And so if they're going to buy the rights to the SEC football, that affects other conferences around the country too, Big C, which is not fair, but money always wins out, Big C. Your thoughts?
But if they're willing to spend that kind of money on the SEC product, Charlton, why aren't they willing to spend that kind of money on the Pac-12 conference? Because the SEC is a cash cow in college football. It has dominated the college football landscape, but you still can't get rid of New Year's Eve because of money. Money will not walk away because of New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Regardless of how much money that the broadcast networks put up, it's not shared equally between all the universities. They talk about the Power 5 conferences who compete in this playoffs, Charlton.
Yeah.
So if you expand the playoffs, how many conferences do you bring in other than the Power 5? Because everybody else is going to have to come to the bargaining table. So now you get two lesser conferences into the playoffs that are not in the Power 5. Are you looking at a watered-down product or an improved product?
Yeah, I think they already crossed that bridge when they used to just choose the defending national champion. They chose, I think, the AP poll and then the coaches poll and the AP poll. They did that. They expanded. They used to just have 2 games, one game. Now they up to 4 games, Big C. But it's all going to work itself out because they'll put some people behind it. I want to get into, on the final part of our program in the day, NFL football is amazing. We have the Minnesota Vikings. They're 11-6. They're out here. And I want to say San Francisco, but it's Santa Clara. It's a 4:35 kickoff East Coast time. Saturday on NBC Sports. It's at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara. We have a grass surface, of course. The grass can be a little bit wet if you're not used to it. The footing and what size cleats you wear is amazing. It's always important. The 49ers, they're actually favored by 7 so far, but that point spread has been going up and down. I guess the real question is, they're going to build this up about Garoppolo and Kirk Cousins. Garoppolo's never won a playoff game. Neither is Kirk Cousins. They're both media darlings. They want to see these guys do well. Give me your feeling on your take on this game, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, this game is really going to go as both quarterbacks go at the end of the day. I mean, that's what happened last week when Kirk Cousins won his first playoff game.
Yeah.
I know that the running games are important. Everyone talked about how well the 49ers did during the regular season with their three-headed monsters. The Minnesota Vikings on the season have been 11-4 when Dalvin Cook has played. He's the horse that runs the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
So as you think about how the quarterbacks get all the accolades when you win, they get all the negative accolades when you lose, both teams have relied heavily on their running games.
Yeah.
But both of these quarterbacks are equipped with very capable receiving corps. Both of them have outstanding tight ends in Kittles and Rudolph, who have made a difference in games throughout the season. Rudolph had the game winner last week in New Orleans with a perfect pass from Kirk Cousins. So don't discount the play of either one of these quarterbacks. Both of them will make the difference in the outcome of this game.
Yeah, so people think it's going to be tempting to focus on those two quarterbacks, as you mentioned. There's also some injuries on both teams, but I think they'll just take the needle and shoot them up, Big C, no matter what it is. When you look at how important it is for the 49ers, I know they have Richard Sherman. To me, he's a leader on that team, even though they're trying to make it about other players in the D-line. There's also Bosa gets a lot of credibility, too. They actually have Bosa on one of the posters to sell this game to their fans, but Richard Sherman's the one with the Super Bowl ring, and you would think he would have the experience that they would stand behind him. But be that as it may, Bosa was drafted by the Niners, and Sherman was not. So, in X Factor, Adam Thielen, we know he had a really tough season dealing with hamstring injuries. Everybody has to go through pain, though. But is there a receiver on the Vikings side of the ball? Thielen, we know he has a lot of history of playing in big games, but pushing off. Everybody has their own opinion, but give me your thoughts on Thielen. Will he be a factor in the game? I know you helped him down in New Orleans, Big C. Your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, both receivers will be a factor, Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen. Everybody's talked about the stitches that Thielen has gotten on his ankle, but think about Kurt Schilling a decade ago or so for the Boston Red Sox, pitching after having surgery on his ankle and going 7 strong innings for the Red Sox. Adam Thielen, they will put some super glue on his ankle, Charlton, tape it up, and whatever break may have come in the skin, they put a little number on it, Charlton.
Yep.
He won't feel a thing. But when you think about this dual threat that the Vikings have at the receiving core, last year both of these players were 1,000-yard receivers. And so Adam Thielen is a very capable receiver in the NFL. I don't see anybody in the 49ers secondary, even with Richard Sherman, being able to cover either one of these receivers one-on-one. So the 49ers defensively is going to have to pick their poison. The 49ers defensive line started out like a wildfire at the start of the season, but the last 5 games, Charlton, they've been very pedestrian. They haven't put a lot of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. When you think about the defensive line, Armstead has been their best player in the last 4 weeks, Charlton, of that defensive line. Their defensive ends have not been able to get up the field and force quarterbacks into the pocket. So I see Kirk Cousins getting rid of the ball quickly, but they can't force to take chances with Dalvin Cook in the backfield.
Yeah, and when you look at Cousins, when he was drafted in 2012, made his first start for the Redskins that year, his offensive coordinator was 49ers coach Kyle Shanahan. So when you talk about tendencies, I never forget how when the Raiders had played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers down in the Super Bowl, and Gruden and Tampa knew a lot of the Raiders' plays because they didn't change a lot of things up. I don't think that's the case now. Players and coaches are too smart for that, Big C. But do you think that has any carryover, or is that too much in the past, Big C? Your thoughts?
You're talking about almost a decade ago, and you're talking about 3 teams apart from each one of them. Shanahan left the Skins, went to the Falcons. Now he's with the 49ers. Cousins left the Skins, have gone to the Vikings. So these players, I mean, their history of knowing each other years ago, Charlton, is something, but it's been too much time in between for either one of them to understand what the other is doing.
Give me your feel on Garoppolo. The 49ers have always wanted him. No one really knows why, because he has no championships under him. You know, he was a backup to Brady in New England, and then he got hurt his first season in San Francisco. They built a really good defense in San Francisco, but Garoppolo's been serviceable as long as he's not trying to throw the ball 40 and 50 yards downfield. Even though he may get lucky every now and then, that's when he's throwing his picks also. I still, in watching him over the final year or so, he's better off when he's trying to throw under 20 yards. That 5 and 10 and 15-yard dink and dunk, get yards after the catch, that's when he's good. But when he stands in the pocket too long, he tends to get happy feet and get sacked. Give me your feeling on how much faith do you have in Garoppolo not throwing the pick six or having the turnovers that he tends to have in the big games, Big C?
Well, Jimmy Garoppolo has playoff knowledge. If you recall, he has a Super Bowl ring on his finger from playing with the New England Patriots. So he knows the pressure of the playoffs. Even though he wasn't pulling the trigger for the New England Patriots, he was there for every snap and understanding what the content of the game meant, Charlton. So him coming into this game, as well as with his coach Mike Shanahan, who has Super Bowl experience also. Well, Kyle Shanahan. Both of these guys will be able to mesh together. I don't see this game being too big for Garoppolo because he's been groomed for this moment. Yes, he was injured last year, but he's been groomed for this moment throughout his career. When he came in with the New England Patriots, he knows what it's like to be in a winning organization. He knows what the pressure cooker look like. He learned behind Tom Brady. So as far as him having an upper hand, he has a coach that has Super Bowl experience. He has a Super Bowl experience of his own in his career. He has a Super Bowl ring on his finger. I give him the upper hand against Cousins in this game.
Well, it should be a fantastic event in the Bay Area. It's been a long time since the Bay Area could be so excited about paying $20,000 for the most expensive ticket, Big C. It may even go up from there. So we wish them nothing but the best, and may there be more football. They're really now Northern California's only team. That's amazing. The Raiders are going to Las Vegas next year. They don't have a name yet. They're still called the Raiders, not Oakland, not Las Vegas, but they just call them the Raiders. And they're still going to practice in I think it's going to be in Napa for next year's preseason, and then start playing their regular teams in Las Vegas. But we'll see what happens with that. Now the 49ers, the Bay Area's only team. I want to go to the next game on Saturday. That's the Tennessee Titans that are 10-7. They're at the Baltimore Ravens 14-2. It's an 8:15 p.m. kickoff time, East Coast time, Saturday on CBS Sports at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. And the Ravens are favored by 8.5. It's a grass surface. I don't know if it's going to have any rain back on the East Coast, but we know everybody's been going through something. I don't think that one player can beat anybody, whether it's Henry or whether it's Jackson. But if there is one player that can beat anybody, Jackson's a dual threat. Henry's only can run the ball. Give me your feeling going into this game, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, you know, all the accolades on the season have been on Lamar Jackson. He's been a phenomenal player. He has done things that we're not used to seeing in NFL football, as far as running and passing the ball, being the fifth leading rusher in the league, being the leading touchdown passer in the league. We've never seen that before in the history of the NFL. But there are some kinks in his armor when you look at it, you know, and he has to be in the flow of the game to be effective. His tight ends have to be working and go unchecked.
Yeah.
And Mark Ingram is doubtful for this game. He may play, but he has the same type of calf strain that Kevin Durant had.
Yeah. Well, they'll shoot guys up, Big C. We know that. The Ravens led the NFL rushing over 206 yards per game as a team, and that's just amazing. 45 yards ahead of the team, the next closest team. When you look at the Titans, Big C, they were third, averaging 138 yards a game. It's all about the turnover factor, too. If you're not going to turn the ball over, I think Tannehill's been playing a lot better, especially coming down the stretch since Mariota was sent to the bench. But I'm not here to predict the game. It just seems that the Ravens, they're 14-2 for a reason. And then you look at Tennessee, they're 10-7 for a reason. It's tough to go on the road and try to win a big game like that. I want to also get your feeling. We talk about how much they got to stop Lamar Jackson. When Henry's rushed for over 100 yards, they've been 6-0. Okay, that's just the fact. At the same time, they did not win their division. So that's not as if they're a better team than Houston even that has a tough time going back-to-back winning games. But how do you stop Henry? You're a defensive guy. Everybody says, well, he's big, strong, and fast, but they still have 7 losses on the season. What must Baltimore do to slow Henry down? Because I don't think Tannehill can beat him, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the majority of those losses came with Mariota at the helm and Henry not getting the running back, getting the ball to run with. When you think about Henry's productivity after Tannehill became the quarterback, Charlton, you have defensive players making business decisions, okay?
Yeah.
They're making decisions, do I want to continue in this game or do I want to go out in concussion protocol? So you have to really decide whether you want to tackle Derrick Henry. He's bigger than every linebacker on the field. He's twice the size of every defensive back on the field. So if the defensive line doesn't get him on the ground, then you got people in Baltimore in the back end talking about, I really don't want to tackle the guy. I'm going to be honest about it.
Yeah.
And that's the truth about NFL defensive backs. You really don't want to tackle this guy. Derrick Henry can be more of a factor in this game than Lamar Jackson can because he puts fear in everybody in the secondary. Lamar Jackson is not putting fear as far as physical punishment.
Right.
He's putting the fear of being posterized on a defender when they're coming out. But if you get Lamar Jackson within the first 2 yards of the line of scrimmage, you win the battle. You just don't want to let him get into the open field. Derrick Henry, if you don't stop him within the 2 yards to the line of scrimmage, everybody's trying to jump on his back because nobody's going to take him on head-on. You'll do that with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
But he can punish a secondary. And that's what Derrick Henry brings to the core of this, is that he can punish. One of the things Lamar Jackson hasn't seen in the past several games is a linebacking core like the Tennessee Titans possess. A lot of speed and a lot of athleticism. You saw how they shut down New England's running game when they got inside the red zone.
Yeah.
That's the same type of tenacity they're going to come after Lamar Jackson with. Lamar Jackson is very capable passer, 66% completion on the season. They want to make him throw the ball. They don't want to let him run, and that's what they're going to be trying to do is force him to throw the ball. So they're going to put a lot of blitz pressure and spy package. Lamar Jackson with Derrick Henry, it's like, hey, it's like going to church. You need to pray.
They got to pray, and they may pray that Henry runs the ball because when you think about a battle of attrition, running backs know this. He carried the ball 34 times against the New England Patriots. A pitcher, when they get to 100 pitches, they want to pull him out. Most running backs don't run the ball more than 20, 22 times. If he has the same number of carries, that's 68 carries in 2 games. And running backs get banged up too. They know they're going to hit him low. Don't try to hit him up high. And it's just hard to do that again.
If you look at that game against the Patriots, nobody hit him.
Yeah.
Everybody let him go by and tried to go for a piggyback ride.
Yeah, and that's the same Patriots that got knocked out in the first round and also lost the previous week to Miami. So it's not as if the Patriots were the same kind of team that the Ravens are, but we'll see. That's why they play the game. Really looking forward to that, Big C. As we jump to Sunday, there's a lot on the line for the Kansas City Chiefs because Andy Reid normally finds a way to go home early, except for the time he went to the Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles and the great Donovan McNabb. Texans are 11-6 down. Them good old boys in Houston. They're at Kansas City. That's 12-4 in the season. It's a 3:05 p.m. kickoff East Coast time Sunday. on CBS Sports. They're at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, Missouri. Grass surface. You got a playoff team that's favored by 10 points at home. It's hard to win by a touchdown in the playoffs. They're getting a 10-point spread at home. I don't know if I buy that. I do think that they'll win the game because Houston's too inconsistent from my thinking, Big C. Your thoughts?
They're beyond inconsistent, Charlton. And if you look at that game last week that they won, they were down by 16 points.
Yeah.
There was no way that they should have won that game. And that play that
Deshaun Watson.
Their quarterback, Deshaun Watson,
yeah.
that he got that's a once-in-a-lifetime play that a quarterback is going to escape from, regardless of how many times you see a highlight reel. They didn't show me anything offensively that they could do in that playoff win last week, Charlton. Will Fuller is supposed to be back, but they're also expecting snowstorms in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Their running game was very anemic last week in their playoff win. So they got out of that by the skin of their teeth. When you look at Kansas City, in their last 10 games, Charlton, they've been 9-1.
Yeah.
9-1. So you talk about a defense that they did not possess last year because they sit back and watch Patrick Mahomes put on an exhibition all season long, so the defense didn't care to play. They just figured Patrick would get them out of it.
Yeah.
Now that Patrick Mahomes was slowed this year by a dislocated kneecap, but he's back in form now, this defense over the last 10 games in Kansas City has only given up 11 points a game.
Yeah.
That's unheard of numbers for an Andy Reid team, that a defense is giving up 11 points a game. So right now, their defense is light years ahead of what they're doing in Texas. And so I think with a healthy Patrick Mahomes, you got all the speed in the world in your receiving court, looking like a track team getting ready for the Olympics.
Yeah.
You got a tight end that you can't cover in Kelsey.
Yeah.
You got two dynamic running backs and Mr. Mahomes at quarterback. That 10-point spread, I like it in Kansas City.
And think about this too. When the Texans went down there and beat them earlier in the year, it was 31-24. But you can't put a lot of thought in that because there were a lot of players that were just injured, not even playing for Kansas City at that time. Think about this too, Big C. I mean, as much as I like Watson, he's an amazing player, but it just seems like he's not in the right system. Now, how do you say that about a team that wins their division? But he was sacked 7 times. And that's by Buffalo. Actually, it was 6 times. He got sacked 6 times last week, and it could have been more, but he got out of that. I mean, he got hit by 2 defenders and spun away and threw the ball away. But if you're giving up 6 sacks, I mean, he's always on the ground. So you would think that Kansas City's going to at least get to him 5 times because he also causes some of that. He'll run around him and not get past the line of scrimmage. So that might be a sack that's not really a sack. It's just what he does. But at what point in time must he learn to throw the ball instead of trying to run and make a dynamic play, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you got to look at the head coach and Dan O'Brien, Charlton. This is the guy that has not incorporated the scheme that works with the ability of his quarterback. You have a quarterback that should be getting rid of the ball in 2.8 seconds.
Yeah.
His system is designed on long, lengthy routes.
Yeah.
And so because you have the speed guys in Fuller out there as well as Hopkins, he's trying to get these guys on the back end of the secondary.
Yeah.
Instead of running a lot of underneath routes like Mahomes does, getting rid of the ball quickly. He hasn't developed a tight end in that offense. He has outstanding running backs. When you think about Hyde, who gained over 1,000 yards, the players and just the offensive scheme in Houston is not akin to the skill set of the quarterback.
Yeah, I really like Kansas City winning this game. 10 points seems like a little bit of a fish oil salesman, but we'll see what happens. I think Watson is the key. And if he can make plays and improvise, that's going to help him, but it's also something that hurts them. Big C, I want to get into the game that I'm so excited to see. These two teams have split in the last 8 games. That they both is 4-4 between them. The Seahawks don't win when they go into Lambeau Field. Maybe there's something cheesy going on in Lambeau Field, Big C, but we'll see what happens. The Seahawks are 12-5, and they're at the Packers 13-3. The Seahawks have only lost 1 game on the road this season, and this game is going to be, it's a 6:40 p.m. kickoff East Coast time Sunday on Fox Sports at Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin. You know, the Packers are favored by 4. This is a heated surface, or they have some heat coils under that stadium there. I know Seattle plays in a lot of rain. They don't play in the snow, so it's going to be cold. But there's something about Seattle. If they lose on the road, it's almost an anomaly. I think if I want to trust the quarterback, as you always say, final 2 minutes, you're down by 4, you got to drive 80 yards. I trust Russell Wilson more than I trust Aaron Rodgers. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't know which one of the quarterbacks I want to trust in this game, whether I want to trust A-Rod or whether I want to trust the magician Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Neither one of these teams have blown out anybody in a while, Charlton. They've been one-score games in their last several contests. And so this is a battle of the cheeseheads. We have Aaron Rodgers as the cheesehead of the Green Bay Packers. We have Russell Wilson, the cheesehead of the Wisconsin Badgers. So both of these quarterbacks have been successful in this state. They played some of the more dynamic football games against each other over the past several years.
Yeah.
Well, when you think about some questionable calls that have been made in the regular seasons and playoffs.
Yeah.
But this is a game, when you think about the kinship of the quarterbacks, I think it's more about the running game.
Yeah.
Will Aaron Jones be effective, and will the Green Bay Packers allow him to run? We know that the Seattle Seahawks running game is beat up. They're without Penny and they're without Carson. And so they're running back by committee right now. We don't know how effective Marshawn Lynch can be. Yes, he looks dynamic in the pass, in the power game, but can that game work against this more youthful Green Bay Packer defense?
Yeah.
So it's going to come down to a lot about the running games. We know the accolades of both quarterbacks in Wilson and Rodgers, but we need some running backs to step up in this game and be productive.
You got to have that. And I know the way you talk about, Aaron Rodgers, and is it really where they got to find a way to disguise their running game and make it look like Aaron Rodgers is doing it to keep giving him the credit? But I think that when you look about who the best Rodgers is on that team is, I like their running game a lot for Green Bay. DK Metcalf, I think this guy is amazing. When you look at Russell Wilson being able to improvise and knowing that he stepped up again in the game against Philadelphia, I think that he's a big key to have Russell Wilson having someone to throw the ball to. Beast mode is good in the red zone if you're trying to punch the ball across the goal line, but he's not going to run 30 and 40 yards. He might be good for a couple of first downs. I still like Russell Wilson. If they lose this game, it's because they're on the road. But I think it's all in the hands of Russell Wilson when it comes to Seattle. He is their run game. And I want to ask you one more thing. All these places we talked about for football, I want to bring it to you after I get to this. Big C Sports, you can follow us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network. In the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. And the apps that I really love are called Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Big C, Lambeau Field, it's a historic field. Is it an intimidating factor? I know we talk about New Orleans being intimidating down there in the dome, Mercedes-Benz Dome. Is Lambeau Field, is that a factor or not, Big C? Your thoughts?
Pro stadiums are not college stadiums, so there's nothing intimidating about a pro stadium. I don't care where you go. The only intimidation you have is within yourself as a professional athlete. And these guys have played in everybody's stadium before, so there's nothing intimidating about them. Both of these teams play in inclement weather. And when you look at Seattle coming to town, there's a lot of thought and emphasis put on Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
But to me, I think the X factors in this game are Tyler Lockett and Jacob Hollister, the tight end for Seattle. He did not have a great game in their last game in Philadelphia. He was missed a couple times by Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
But he's a forgotten entity in that Seattle offense. He's a surefire guy, Charlton. If you put the ball on his hands, he's going to catch it. So I think Jacob Hollister will make a difference. Tyler Lockett will make a couple of big plays. Yes, DK Metcalf made some splash plays in Philadelphia. But I think these two receivers are the most important part of the Seattle offense if they plan on moving on beyond Green Bay.
Is Arrowhead Stadium a factor? We talk about that and Seattle being the two loudest stadiums in the league. It hasn't really worked in their favor. Do you consider that to be worth at least a point, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, like I said, the point is about being on the field in playoff football. You just saw Seattle win a game in Philadelphia, which has some of the most loyal, raucous fans in the NFL. You saw the Minnesota Vikings win a game in New Orleans in a stadium that's as loud as any place that you'll ever play, and people say the Saints can't lose in the playoffs, but they lost their last two playoff games in that stadium. So it's been proven that home field advantage is really not a great advantage when it comes down to the playoffs because everybody's focused. One of the things about playoff football is that nobody understands. is that there's really no superstars in playoff football. Why? Because everybody's check is the same size. So you don't have anybody making more than you, playing next to you, playing across from you. So you're getting the same pay that everybody else is. So everybody's on the same grade scale when it comes to playoff football.
Well, I'm looking forward to this great weekend. We have the College Football Championship, James Madison, North Dakota State. We have LSU and Clemson down in the Bayou. Should be a lot of gumbo and moonshine served up down there. And then the potpourri of football of the NFL playoffs. Looking so much forward to it. For you basketball lovers, the NBA schedule tonight, Atlanta Hawks at the Washington Wizards. The Pelicans are playing at the Knicks, Big C. The Heat are against the Nets. The Spurs taking on the Grizzlies on the road. The Pacers are at the Bulls. The Orlando Magic down in the desert playing the Phoenix Suns. The Charlotte Hornets taking on the Utah Jazz. The LA Lakers playing the Dallas Mavericks down in Texas, Big C. Milwaukee Bucks, Sacramento Kings, and Golden State Warriors and Clippers. Just a lot going on in the world of sports. And I hope that everybody can stay safe over this weekend and enjoy your sports. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, this is a weekend of fours when you look at college and pro football. You got four NFL games in the playoffs this weekend, Charlton. You got Clemson going for his fourth national championship game on Monday.
Yep.
You got LSU playing for its fourth national championship all overall. So you got a weekend full of fours in college and pro football.
And you can have a weekend full of fun and fours, Big C. Just don't use four-letter words every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, where you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, as Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.